Ever since I made my first video about how I made my own iPhone from parts I bought here in the markets in Shenzhen, I've gotten tons of emails and comments from you guys saying, hey, I want to do that too, can you help me? And so I've decided to put together a couple videos to tell you a little bit about what I've learned in the process of doing this. If you haven't already seen it, go watch the first video I made going through all of the various parts on an iPhone 7. That'll give you some important context and help you find all the parts that you need. This video is really about the assembly process. Once you got all the parts, how do you put them together? The very first thing I'll tell you is the reference that I used, which is the iFixit.com website. They've been kind enough to sponsor this video, but I've been using their guides and information for a long time now, before I even started Strange Parts. In fact, I used their guides as my main reference when I built my own iPhone from parts that I bought here in the market in Shenzhen, and I've used them on every iPhone project I've done with Strange Parts since. Now, their main focus is providing references for repair, but they're also really useful if you want to take a bunch of random parts and assemble them into a new device. They're all teardown guides, which means they're like a step-by-step of taking apart the device, but if you follow them in reverse, they're great assembly guides. One of the biggest challenges about assembling an iPhone is that there are a whole bunch of different screws, different sizes and head types and diameters, and they do a really good job of telling you what screws you need to use where based on the length. And so in order to use that, you really need a pair of calipers. These aren't super expensive. I want to say I paid like $10 for them here in China. Undoubtedly, if you buy them somewhere else, you're gonna have to pay more, but they're not that much. I don't know, maybe $30 for a decent pair in the West. And they just allow you to very precisely measure widths, lengths. So you can do outside widths here, inside widths here. There's a bunch of different things you can do with them. But I just use them to measure the screw lengths to match up to what iFixit has on their website. And then you just need some very basic tools. So you need some screwdrivers. I have a couple different types. I have a lot of screwdrivers, actually. I have accumulated many over the time I've been here in Shenzhen. So I have like just some generic screwdrivers that I bought in the markets. I also have the Schwanho brand white labeled ones that my friends the Tool Brothers gave me. This is their white label brand. They're pretty good. And then I have some really fancy ones from Zark over at Tool Plus. If you want to spend some money and get a really amazing set of screwdrivers, these are pretty incredible. They're not cheap. So anyway, I'll use a mix and match of these. I've got way more than I need. You probably only need like 3 or 4. You need the tri-tip, you need a standard Phillips. You don't strictly need this, but this is like a cross one for the, I don't know what they call them. They look like a standoff to me. You honestly can get by with those with just a slotted screwdriver or an X-Acto blade. That's what I've done in the past. And then you need a pentalobe for getting into the case, like just the last 2 case screws. And that should pretty much do it. A pair of tweezers helps when you lose screws and stuff. If you're taking something apart, well, it's just general good to have like a plastic spudger, just like a plastic pry tool. It's harder to damage stuff when you're prying it with a plastic tool as opposed to a metal tool, particularly around the battery. I'm not a professional cell phone repair technician. There are tons of videos you can go and watch by people who are. This is just what I've learned in the process of assembling something from parts that came from a bunch of different devices. My goal is not to teach people how to be professional repair technicians or even to repair their own phones. It's just to share what I've learned, and some of it's probably wrong. So yeah, feel free to, I guess, rip into me into the comments if it is wrong. This is just my 2 cents. The other thing that I'll point out is that I have this silicone repair mat. I always screw those up. Silicone repair mat. This thing is cool because stuff doesn't bounce as easily on it like screws, so they tend to stay put more. It's a little bit sticky. And then this one has wells on it that I have all my screws sorted out into. There are ones that are fancier that have all sorts of little compartments, and then there are ones that are just flat. They're not very expensive. I would recommend picking one up, not even if you're just doing cell phones, but for anything with small parts, they're great. Total fan. Someone's girlfriend emailed me and said they wanted to get them one for a birthday present. I imagine that birthday is past now. I cannot find your message for the life of me, but there, if you look for like cell phone repair mat, that's what you find. I'll try and put one in the link in the description below. So let's talk about measuring screws for a sec. The screws for these screen clips that go in the case are not actually in the iFixit guide for reasons I don't understand. So I'm just using the calipers here, and these are 1.6 millimeters. The iFixit guide doesn't have diameters for reasons that perplex me, particularly given that the screws are multiple diameters. Looks like a 1.2 millimeter. Oh, 0.89, somewhere in there. So yeah, they're definitely multiple diameters. Let's build a phone. Okay, so first off, the thing to start with is obviously the case. This is like a normal iPhone case. I am currently working on the wireless charging video, which you guys probably have already seen by now. So I'm going to be installing in that case, and it looks a little weird. It has a hole cut in it. So it's not your standard iPhone 7 case, and it has the glass back like an iPhone 8 or 10 because the wireless needs to go through the back. So anyway, everything else is gonna be the same other than the different looking back and the charging cable. So ignore those pieces if you just want to build a stock iPhone, but I figured I would talk through this process and make it into a separate video while I'm putting together this phone for the wireless charger. The first thing is probably to install the glass back into the shell. I'm gonna hold off on that for now because, as you guys already know, I have another glass back coming in. It's not, I have a custom back being made and it's not done yet. So, for the sake of this video, you already know what happened, but for the sake of the wireless charging video, you don't yet. So we're just gonna run with this one now. It's also gonna be easier to debug what's going on with this wireless charger because I'm still not quite sure how to do this. So I think the first step is to install the screen clips, which are just these little metal brackets that go in the side of the case. Usually the cases are pretty bare. There's a fair amount that still has to go into them. They often come with this little baggie of parts. So I'm gonna put all of these parts. There's just a few things that need to go in here, and I'm gonna need some super glue. We'll get as far as we can without that and see what else I forgot. Okay. Okay, that pretty much does it for the little fittings in the case. There's at least one little screen here I'm missing that covers a microphone, I think. Not strictly necessary, but it keeps crap out of the microphone hole. I think I'm gonna do the top and bottom cable assemblies that go in here and in here. I'm gonna start with the bottom cable assembly. This is where the lightning jack and everything goes into. So lightning jack, couple microphones, connector for the haptic engine, which just kind of sits down in here. And it has some adhesive that sort of holds it in. This one's already been pried up once, so the adhesive's not perfect. And then there's a whole bunch of screws that go in. There are supposed to be stickers that go over those screws. I don't think it matters that much. I'm not gonna put them there. It's probably to prevent shorting of something, but yeah, who needs them? There's a grounding bracket in the upper right corner that goes in here. It is this little zigzaggy one, this one here. That. All right, let's do button covers. This is something that I typically have a hard time with. I think the button covers are the hardest part in putting together a phone. So here are all the pieces. We don't need these right now. Don't need a SIM card tray. And we can put that off to the side for the moment. The first step is these little tiny O-rings that go on the legs. So I put it on to tweezers like that, and then slip it over the leg, then pull the tweezers off, and it goes on the second slot. Second indent there. Like that. This one already has them. You can see there. I'll do them on this one as well. And then those go in here. Okay. The next thing you want to do is put on these little clips. Like that. So on one end opens to the side, one end opens down. And so that you put the end where that slides on from the side, you put that in first, and then you swing the whole thing down and it just clips on to the other leg. There is something important to note about these. On here, there is a little shim that is right there. And I don't quite know what the purpose of this is. It's the thing that really screwed me up in my first time making one of these. Putting together an iPhone was, I didn't know that I needed the shim. I think it's there to control for tolerances in manufacturing to get the button click, the feel exactly right. The important point in all this is you may have to put that shim on yourself. They come as like little stickers on a plastic sheet, but they're critical if you want your buttons to be clicky. Otherwise, yeah, the buttons just don't feel right without it. Yep. Now that those are on, now we put these little wire bars on the button. So they go onto the legs of the button covers. Okay, and then these swing down like that. Easily the most frustrating part of this whole process is these button covers. Yes. So the next part is to put in the button, the upper flex cable. It has the actual buttons, the actual switches for the volume buttons, the lock button. It has the flash, a microphone. It's a bunch of stuff. It's like this octopus thing. There should be lines inside the case that are laser etched to line everything up. So this sort of just sits in here like this. There's a little peg here, and the microphone cable, the microphone part of the cable sort of goes over that. So there's a bunch of things to align here. The flash sort of sits down in 2 notches there. And then this cable, you just want to carefully sort of align to all the lines. There should be an adhesive on this. This one's probably kind of dead from being in the other phone. So then this part of the cable assembly for the buttons goes over here. And then there are going to be some screws that go in that way. The next thing to do is to put the cover, the button cover for the silent switch. There is a colored indicator on this particular shell. It's white here, and that indicates that it is in silent mode. That goes up. And then this gets clipped into this assembly. So there's a clip here and there's a clip here, and it gets clipped underneath. So you can put one leg under, and then I guess you can sort of just slide it up under here. Like that. Okay, that's it. So let's do the flash bracket next. Okay, so this is the bracket that holds the flash on, hence the name flash bracket. The flash sits down sort of like that. There's a plastic cover underneath here that I glued on, and it has 2 little legs that sort of sit down on either side of that. Let's put this cover on top now. And this just prevents it from moving around. Yep, just sits in there like that. Probably 2 screws to go on there. Okay, there's a little circuit board here. Antenna flux cable. I don't think it's the actual antenna, but I think it connects something to something else related to antennas. So it sits on top of that standoff and then gets another screw into it. Like, yay. So next, I am going to install the speaker, the bottom speaker. We're gonna put it right here. The long one goes over here through all of this stuff. Then there is a screw in the corner of the case. Now, Taptic engine goes in over here. And this thing is super magnetic. So it picks up all the screws all the time. So I sometimes like to get the connector put in here first before I actually seat the Taptic engine down in. I think it's a little bit of a hard connector to get in. So now 3 screws in there. Okay, now 3 screws into the Taptic engine to hold it in. So we're done with this lower portion of the phone now. And now it is time to put in some stuff that goes up here. So next is the camera, the rear camera. So that thing clips into the metal clip we glued in earlier. So next, we finally put in the logic board, the brains of the phone. Make sure all the cables are out of the way. And now we can plug in the cables for this antenna here. So camera, antenna, this is the cable for the buttons and the flash. I am going to do this little bracket here. This is like some sort of grounding bracket. So this bracket goes up here. All right, now I'm gonna install this little bracket. I think somewhere I read it's a Wi-Fi antenna. I might be wrong on that. So that goes there. We're pretty much done. A couple things left. Obviously, the battery. Because I'm doing this as part of the wireless charging video, I'm going to put in the wireless charger now. Sorry, I'm going to do one more thing first. I'm going to put these little antennas on. These little antenna wires. So one goes down here. Well, they both go in the same spot, but I'm doing the longer one first. All right, now the wireless charging bit. So this connector is on. Obviously, that's going to be a lot easier if you're not trying to do it with the wireless thing as well. And then the battery threads underneath the wireless thing. Obviously, just sort of drops right in if you don't have the wireless add-on. And I'm going to leave that unplugged for the moment, but I'm just going to sit it in there. So I need to reassemble the screen. I already did the Touch ID, and now I need to do the upper part. This thing is like an octopus. It is a little hard to work with. There's a lot of folds in it. There are some plastic fittings here. There's a plastic fitting here. There's one here. There's a thing here. And there's a bracket here. Those may or may not come on your screen. You may need to add them yourself. So I often have to add this piece and that piece there. And I think this one too. So you might need those little parts. I don't know exactly what they're called. This is for holding the camera. This is holding the light sensor, and this is for the speaker. So they're probably called something around that. Oh, and we need to put the shield onto this metal shield. So you need this cable assembly, and you need this bracket that goes on there. Okay, so this goes in here, but this bit here folds like that. And then that folds under. So there are a couple folds in here. You can see that. And then the other piece you need is the earpiece speaker. I guess you start with this out over here, and then this all goes in there, like wedged underneath, and then this goes over it like that. And you just, it's like wrestling an octopus. You just gotta hold everything down. And then there are 2 more screws that go in here and here. So this is just sort of a protector. And then we gotta pull out some of the ones for the Touch ID down here. These right here, there, and there gotta come out. Gotta do now just the screws around the outside here. So we got the screen, got everything put on the screen. I demoed this on the white screen, and I'm now moving to the black screen. So if you saw me do all of the putting in the camera and the Touch ID button on a white screen, it's the same, it's just black, because I needed it for the wireless video, because the red looks way better with the black, you gotta admit. So, gonna put this on next. So first I put this upper connector, and this is the hard one, and you just sort of like, I don't know, bend it like so, and push it in with your finger. And then I set this down on these 3 screws here, and I put like a box or something that it can lean up against, like that, so that I don't rip these cables. And then I focus on getting the other 2 connectors in without smashing anything. And make sure you don't press down until you get everything really lined up, because you can damage the connectors or damage the board around the connectors. And then lastly, we put a bunch of covers on. So let's plug in the battery now. So plug in the battery, and then we'll put the cover over this, and the cover over this connector and that connector. So now usually I would test to see whether the phone turns on, because I'm doing this with the wireless charger. So these 3 covers that are left are just to hold the connectors, all these connectors here and here, to just hold them down. You don't strictly need them, but with the wireless add-on, you do really need the cover here to push down on this connector a little bit, provide a little bit of extra pressure to keep that connection really solid. So there is some extra foam that is supposed to go on top of this piece here, which is the connector for the Lightning engine, and it's where the piece for the wireless charging plugs into. So I'm gonna put that on now. One like on top, and then one below it, and then one sort of on top of the first 2, sort of towards the top. And then this cover goes on. Okay, so that cover goes on here. Long screw goes over here. The short ones go to put these 2 brackets in. This one goes over here. This bracket goes on over the camera connector and the upper screen cable. So that's pretty much it for installing an iPhone 7. I haven't done 3 things. 2 of them are adhesives, so the battery strips that hold the battery down and the gasket that goes around the screen. And then finally, there are 2 pentalobe screws that go into the bottom holes here. Strictly speaking, you can get away without the adhesive. I'm gonna leave them out for now, and I tend to leave them out until I'm very confident the phone's fully working, I'm happy with it. There are 2 caveats with that. The battery strips are to prevent the battery from sliding around, which will damage it over time. So if you're gonna carry the phone around a lot, I do suggest you put those in. And then the screen gasket is to help with waterproofing, and it also helps hold the screen flush I think that one is less important, but yeah, if you're gonna use this phone every day, definitely put it in once you feel like everything's fully working. If you're gonna keep popping it open to look at stuff and play with stuff, leave it off. It makes it really hard to open things. It's the same reason I leave out the battery strips, is it's just a pain to deal with if the thing is stuck down. You can't take the battery out. So gonna leave them out for now. All right, so to put the screen together, so once you've got everything in here, so you just start pushing here, just work your way up. You may get resistance here, and it's because these tabs here are too far forward. So you can just push them in with the screwdriver. There we go. Now, I need some screws. So those screws will hold the screen in place. There's some clips up here, clips on the sides, and then finally, SIM card tray. And that just pops in. You can actually put this in much sooner in the process. You want to make sure to pull that out if you ever want to pull out the logic board, because it goes into the logic board, and you don't want to damage the logic board by trying to pull up. So there it is. Here is a fully assembled iPhone 7. That's how I do it. I'm sure there are professional phone repairmen that know a few tricks that I don't know. But that's what I've learned. And in particular, I really wanted to focus in this video on the things that are different from disassembling and then reassembling an iPhone 7, as opposed to assembling one from a bunch of different parts from a bunch of different phones. If you haven't seen it already, I made a video previous to this about all of the different parts. That being said, I do have an answer for you on where to get parts. I want to thank iFixit again for sponsoring this video, and I want to talk a little bit more about them. They're my favorite reference for iPhone repair guides and teardown guides and what part goes where and what parts do you need. They also sell parts and tools. I'm really thrilled to be partnering with iFixit on this video. I've been a huge fan of theirs for a really long time now, and honestly, I'm not saying that just because they're paying me to or something like that. I've had their website open on my laptop just off camera for every single one of the iPhone projects I've done with strange parts. And honestly, it would have been a lot harder to do what I've done if I didn't have them. The most important part for me is the level of detail that their guides have. They have super high-res photos that show every single step of the teardown process, so that I can see that one little detail that I'm not quite sure how that thing goes. And then they've got, important details like what screw goes where with lengths down to the 0.1 millimeter. It's that level of attention to detail that really means that I can rely on that information as like a canonical reference for how something goes together and what parts I need and where they go. But they don't cover just iPhone. They have thousands of step-by-step teardown and repair guides and videos for all kinds of devices. They also sell spare parts and tools. I've actually used their repair guides to repair an Android phone that I broke on a motorbike trip in Thailand a number of years ago, and I found it pretty straightforward. And this was before I did all these crazy iPhone adventures. I also have some good news that is related to iFixit. A bunch of you guys have been asking me, where can I get spare parts, specifically logic boards, which are apparently quite hard to find for iPhones if you want to buy just the logic board. Good news. iFixit has logic boards in stock. Right now they have iPhone 5 to 6S. They have a whole bunch of different varieties in that range. They're working on iPhone 7. I guess they've had them in stock in the past and they don't right now, but they're going to. So if you're looking for a logic board, if that's the one thing that's held you back from building your own iPhone, or if you have a device that you want to repair, go check out iFixit. They have all sorts of different spare parts, including logic boards. I'm gonna leave a bunch of links in the description below, specifically the iPhone 7 repair guide that I use to build up an iPhone. I'll put that right at the top of the description, but then below the fold, if you hit the expand more thing, I'll put in a bunch of other links to iFixit repair guides, where to buy tools, where to buy spare parts. The last thing that I'd like to say is a bunch of you guys have been contacting me saying, Scotty, will you go to the markets and buy such and such part for me? And for a bunch of different reasons, guys, I'm just not set up to do that. I'm way too busy making videos, and there are just a lot of complications with doing something like that, particularly given the number of people that ask me. I get like 10 messages a day probably asking me to go buy spare parts. So unfortunately, if you ask me, the answer is gonna be no, and often I just don't have time to answer everybody. So if you're looking for spare parts, iFixit is your place to go. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see more like it, hit that subscribe button down below and stay tuned for more adventures. I'll be back with you again soon.